Great. So we're going to call the meeting to order. And so we have present at the meeting. We have Emma, Mike, Peggy, Kate, and Leah, and myself are the members that are present. And this meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20A16 and ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County website and on the Albemarle County calendar when available. And so I would like to welcome our attendees. We've got Carol Diggs and Maggie Walker, and Nicole Jones. And then we've got a phone number. That's not Kate, is it? We've got somebody who's dialed in by phone.
Looks like the same number.
Okay.
So
That's
All right.
Kate.
That's Kate. All right. Well, welcome everybody. So great to have everyone here. We're going to start by reviewing the agenda, and hopefully everybody had an opportunity to take a look at that and to go ahead and approve it. So if hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to look at that, and somebody is willing to make a motion to approve that.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Peggy.
You and Mike has seconded that, and I'm just going to go down the roll. Emma, are you in agreement?
aye.
Okay, great. And Kate?
Yes.
And Leah?
Yes.
And do I have to ask Peggy and
I'll
as
say
well?
yes.
and Mike?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. All right. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to look at the beautiful minutes that Kim writes up for us, and it's well worth taking the time to take a look at those, and I hope everybody does. Does anybody have anything they want to add or amend to that?
Look good.
If not, would somebody move to approve them?
I'll move to approve them.
Thank you, Leah.
I'll
And-
second.
Thank you, Peggy. And we're just going to go down the roll again. So Emma, do you approve the minutes?
I do.
Mike?
Aye.
Peggy again, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Kate? Kate, what do you think about those minutes?
Yes.
Great. And Leah?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. All right. Those were the October minutes, rather. And all right, so we are going to go ahead and move into our follow-ups. And so the first thing on the list is the important site updates and any outreach anybody might have done with those important sites. Has anybody had an opportunity to visit an important site and or to make contact with a landowner that has an important site? I'm just going to say that I did walk through Biscuit Run and had the opportunity to see that the county parks are beginning to do the trail building there. And so that's actively happening. And I also did notice that the invasive plants continue to march into those beautiful wooded areas as well. But it's exciting to see that that there is work happening in Biscuit Run. So, all right. If nobody else has anything to add about the important sites, then we will move on to the spotted lanternfly update. And I would just like to thank Emma for completing the final draft of the flyer. Kim, would you mind, since you're such a great at getting those, sharing your uh, sharing your screen. If you could just show everybody the flyer. And so, and Rod, I know you're here as an attendee, but I'd love for you to chime in as well. But Rod, looks like you were able to get that out to, was it 500 different households?
Are you seeing the flyer now?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, we can see
sorry
it.
to interrupt. I can't tell
Yes,
which
we can see
screen
it.
it's showing.
It looks good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Could
this,
someone email, this is Kate, could someone email me a copy of that? I thought it was coming out last time, but I must have missed it. Because
Yeah.
I missed it twice the last both meetings. I've been stuck on the phone when we looked at it.
yeah, we'll make sure to get that to you. And
Thank you.
so it went through several different iterations, and I think it looks really great. And I don't know if Rod, I know if he would like to just speak about how this ended up looking. Was it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper?
Yes, yes. So this is on an 8.5. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, this is on 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I did discover in the course of this process that using every door direct mail, which is a 20-cent postage per page, that you can't use just your regular old printer paper. You need a little heavier weight paper to do that. So I wound up using 32-pound paper, which is a little more expensive than your normal printer paper, but not a huge deal. And so yeah, we sent it out on 2 postal routes. One which is just the post office box in Whitehall, which is 53 post office boxes. And after getting that out, we sent it out on a real postal route out here in Western Albemarle, which was 457 mailboxes. So this is just kind of a trial run to see what it takes, what it costs, and once you figure out how to do it, it's not hard, but it takes a while to figure out how to do it.
And so Rod, I know you used, it was all, the labor was free, the use of your printer, of course.
Right.
And so this ended up being about 36 cents per mailing. Is that what it was?
Well, I forget what it came out exactly for me on the small sample size. I did call around to printers to get estimates of what they would charge. And it looks like if you guys wanted to do this on a large scale, you could do it for about 30 cents a page, plus or minus. And that would include postage, printing, and the paper for 30 cents a page.
Can I ask you, do you think that this would have fit on a half sheet of paper and like using that heavier stock, or do you think it really, in order to see it, it needed to be on the full 8.5 by 11?
Well, I mean, if you shrink it down, it of course makes the print smaller.
Yeah.
And you could also, of course, try and print on both sides. And I did not get estimates for that. I suspect that printing on both sides would increase the printing costs. So yeah, I'm not sure that any of those things is going to make a huge bit of difference. In terms of cost, because the paper and printing, if you're dealing in large volumes, thousands of, if you go to 10,000 copies, for example, you're only talking about 7 or 8 or 9 cents a page. So yeah, you might save a penny by changing some of this, is my suspicion.
And have you gotten any feedback from your neighbors or?
No, nor would they know to give me feedback.
Yeah, or just heard anything through the grapevine or?
No, and actually, now that you mention it, we were just gone for a week and came back, and I just went through our mail today, and it wasn't there. So I'm going to have to track down the post office and ask what happened, because there's always a possibility that I turned this in 10 days ago and they haven't delivered it yet.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty
Maybe
good
is a mail
possibility.
just
Bulk mail goes. Sorry,
Oh.
this is Kate. I was just going to say bulk mail goes very slowly. It's the last thing delivered. So 10 days, I would think it would not necessarily be there yet.
Yeah, so that's actually my suspicion now that I reflect on it, is I suspect it's still sitting down in the Crozet post office. Or actually, yeah, Crozet post office.
Peggy,
into something that could fit into a size 11 envelope, or, I mean, the location of the address label and stamp and die is just strange to me.
Because the way this is laid out with the indicia up in the upper right-hand corner and the local postal
Yeah.
customer, this conforms with the requirements of their program called Every Door Direct Mail. They've got very specific requirements, and that's what gets you a flat 20-cent delivery charge per item.
So there's nothing on the back of this. It's just front page with this address and,
Yeah, it's blank on the back.
oh, it's up front and back?
No, it's blank on the
Oh, it's
back.
blank on the back. Oh,
Yeah,
that's.
no
that's
printing on the
strange.
back.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I do a lot, I do publications and do a lot of mailings and, anyway.
Well,
But
it-
yeah, I mean, I just got something in the mail that was mailed a month ago that I published, and it just got like yesterday, so the mail is outrageous,
Yeah.
anyway.
I just have a short comment. In trying to use a QR code on both of these, I'm not sure I was able to separate them well, and I may have ended up pulling up the report here QR code as opposed to how to kill the Atlantis. The Atlantis invasive species flyer from VCE I can get access to and comes up, but there's nothing about how to kill it. So I may not have gotten the right QR code because they're too close together. If we email this out, or yeah, if we email this out for folks to try and get the QR code off their laptop, it's doable. But if you could separate them, that might help move them further apart.
Yeah,
Oh,
and maybe
that's good.
put the VCE logo in between them.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. Huh. Well,
Nicely done,
also,
though. I like it.
yeah, it's good that it was probably done after the election too. Just everybody's got their mailbox stuffed with election mail, so.
No,
Yeah,
that's
laptops. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Emma and thank you, Rod, for embarking on this. And also, like, it's great to have done the test run of it. And now we've got this really valuable information. Rod shared with us all the, the cost and really laid out the expenses for every piece of it to help guide if we were able to do this in the future. We have all that information. So I think that's really helpful. And just doing this test run of it is really valuable, can be really valuable to us. So thank you for that. And I hope, Rod, you'll keep us posted when it does arrive in your
Yeah.
mailbox.
And of course, if anybody does want to pursue doing this out on a broader basis, I'd be happy to work with who's ever going to be on point for it.
Yeah. And that comes to like, do we have, would there possibly be a funding source for that mailing? And so all those things to consider. All right, thank you so much, you guys. And
Christine, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
I just want to say, from my perspective, from the Natural Resources Program, we don't have a funding source currently, but I've been working with the Director of Planning to get an actual line item in the budget for the Natural Resources Program. And he added implementation of the Biodiversity Action Plan. So I'm hoping, it's not going to be a huge amount, but I'm hoping that in the future, there will be a budget for us to use for things like this. Just
Let me also.
working on that.
Yeah, let me also just mention that I ran into one of the Farm Bureau guys when I was doing this at the post office. And he told me, hey, if you need any help paying for what I was just doing then, that he could probably help out a little bit through the Farm Bureau. So there may be other sources like that that would be willing to help with this because they will benefit.
Mm-hmm. And so if we were to do, if we were to expand the mailing, do you think that there's a strategic time when this should be done? Where we're in the spring, when the nymphs are out, like when maybe we need to strategize if we were able to get to do that, to expand the mailing, when would be the best time to actually put that, for that to arrive in people's mailbox?
Yeah, well, my gut reaction would be that the best time is when the adults are visible, because that's what people are most likely to see.
Mm-hmm.
And which of course is right now until the frost hits, which could be tonight.
Right.
So, you know, late summer, and then of course, if the post office keeps doing what they're doing, you have to allow, pick a number, a 2-month lead time, to get it actually out into people's hands.
Well, Rod, thank you for that. And I think, it'd be worth having that conversation with the Farm Bureau, and also to see, if the extension has any plans to do, what their plans are for more outreach. What and if they plan to do. But also it's a good, yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, this is Kate. I have a question. I guess I'm still a little fuzzy because I haven't seen this about who it's from.
So it's got the Virginia Extension logo on there. And we're really directing it, people for more information and for reporting to the extension, the Virginia
So
Tech.
why is an extension paying for it?
Well,
Good question.
maybe we should
guess
ask them if they want to pay for it.
This is a statewide risk to biodiversity and pollution and any number of other issues. I guess I just feel like that's a logical question. I think someone should push them on if they haven't. I mean, one of us. Anyway, just get out loud.
Question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And I'm going to put that on an action item for me to do, is to, since now we have the flyer, and we were working with, I can't remember her name, our contact for Spot Lanternfly, and she's been really helpful.
Carrie
and-
Swanson?
Yes. And then Carrie, I can reach out to her and ask her if there's any possibility of funding this, now that we've got these numbers and we know what it's going to cost and it's all set up and ready to go.
Hmm.
All right.
Who
Well,
do
thank
I
you.
ask about getting a copy of it? By email.
To send
Can someone on the committee just email it to me?
Kim. Let me
I can
see.
send it to you right now, Kate.
Yeah. All right.
That'd be
Thank
fabulous.
you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Rod, do you want to add anything else?
Oh, one of the things I haven't done is try to figure out what would the strategy be if you wanted to send it out across the county in terms of you could do it the way we did with every door direct mail, particularly for all the rural postal routes. I don't know how well that works in the city of Charlottesville or other places that are more developed. And nor do I know how many thousands of addresses we're dealing with. And one of the things that gets tricky is if you have an apartment building, there could be 20 addresses in the apartment building, but it's not clear that you want to hit all 20 of those as opposed to actually going to the landowner of the building.
Hmm.
But in the rural areas, I think it's relatively straightforward. When you get into the really developed areas where there's apartment buildings and businesses, it's less obvious.
And was that pretty straightforward as long as you're sticking to those rural routes? I mean, it would make sense to just really target those areas initially, because I could definitely see if you're in an apartment building, this is not something you can necessarily be keyed into.
Yeah, on the other hand, this bug is at least as urban as it is suburban or rural. So yeah, you don't necessarily want to ignore the urban areas either.
Yeah, but there may be other ways to reach those apartment dwellers,
Right.
you know, whether it's through, and I think this is a good sort of a segue to Mike and his work with the Speakers Bureau for the Piedmont Master Gardeners, the possibility of speaking to HOAs.
Yeah, I met with Fern yesterday and we kind of walked through the process. I am going to become the coordinator for all of the Speakers Bureau and be the presenter, I guess, for the Spotted Lanternfly presentation, which is already put together. Did I send you a copy of that, Christine?
Yeah, you did send me a copy of
Okay.
it, and
Okay.
if we could share it with the rest of the committee.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
let's roll that out to the committee and get some feedback. Folks want to do that. And then I'm going to be looking to find, I'll start with Cathcart since they're my HOA property manager and see where I go with that. I'm not sure my board is that interested, but I will work to try and heighten their interest a little, I hope.
Yeah, and maybe there's a possibility, I don't know if some of these apartment complexes have a newsletter or ways of communicating with their tenants. or
Many
people.
of that's a great idea. Many of them do have newsletters, and it'd just be a matter of getting to their property manager to have it incorporated with the latest newsletter. So that's a great idea.
So,
It's also useful if you can get to the actual owner of the building, because the tenants are the people who are going to have the eyes on the ground looking for them, but it's the owner who's the only one who's got the power to kill the ailanthus before the bug arrives. So you really want to try to do both if you can.
yeah, good point. All right, yeah, so I think that if we, that seems strategic to target the more urban areas. And then with a letter to property managers, owners, see if there's possibility of talking to the HOAs, and then the more rural areas with potentially that direct mail.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, you guys. Thanks for everybody's work on that. And so we'd have to think, would anybody be willing to write up a little newsletter piece, a piece that would be appropriate for a newsletter?
I'll take that on.
Oh, that'd be great, Mike. Thank you.
You bet.
Mike, if there's anything you'd like another pair of eyes to look at, feel free to email me anything you want.
Okay, that'd be great. Kim, can you send me the flyer?
Yeah, we need to get
please.
make sure everybody's got that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to the whole group.
That's the thing I would want to try to work from, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and you can hand it out if you're giving presentations in person.
Of course.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys for all of your work on that. And the frost is coming. So thank goodness for that. Kim, have you heard about any other sightings or the number of sightings? No.
No, I haven't, but I haven't also gone looking to find out. So
Yeah.
Carrie would know, I'm sure. If you
Well,
when you
maybe-
talk to her.
Yeah, I will ask her and give you guys all an update. How's that sound?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there any update on what happened to that known location in Albemarle?
I'll ask her those questions and get
Yeah.
back to all of you about that. All
There was a
right.
report that there was a sighting or a bug potentially in the Maplewood Cemetery, but that turned out not to be
Ah,
accurate. But
Well,
Carrie went to look, Fern went to look, so we had some good eyes out there to make sure.
that's great.
And last time I think we heard there was an Afton sighting, right? Or is that the one you're referring to, Michael?
No, this was in the Maplewood Cemetery
Okay.
here in town.
So I thought the Afton one was confirmed.
That I don't know. Maybe Carrie could confirm that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will get back to all of you on that.
Okay.
All right. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that was the important site criteria. And Kate, did you say, I don't know if you'd gotten my email, but did you say that you had, when you met with Lonnie and Nancy, that you guys had begun working on that criteria?
We had come up with a list, which I do not have in front of me, it's at home in my book, of just kind of general ideas related to, not really, but yes, we shifted to a criteria instead of a ranking. That was what we had talked about. That idea of finding a way to categorize so that we could understand what we had versus trying to decide which was number one because of apples and oranges and just too many factors.
And I think because you don't have that list in front of you, perhaps it would be better to delay this discussion. But could you go ahead and share that list with everybody?
I can share what we have. I haven't looked at it for a couple of weeks and I simply can't remember exactly what it looks like. So I will be glad to share something out to the group so that you have an idea of what we were talking about.
Yeah, that would be great. And does the policy working group rather, were you able to meet, or do you guys have plans to continue to meet?
That's kind of something I have a question about. How are we allowed to meet?
So
We kind of
you
never
could-
circled back around that to my awareness.
Yeah, so since we dissolved the subcommittees, and so you could have a conversation, you and Lonnie could have a conversation. So 2 or fewer could meet without it being a public meeting. 2 committee members. So it would be possible for you and Lonnie to meet and to discuss further. And if you wanted, I think Nancy was working with you guys. So if Nancy wants to join you, then you would need to work with Carolyn to set up and make it a public meeting.
Okay, I think that this is still, I do not agree with this interpretation, but I don't have that power. So I think that all this does is limit effective citizen participation by non-decision making entities. So that's cool.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and just table that discussion for now. And then we're gonna go ahead and move to the staff update. Kim.
I don't really have a lot to update right now. I've been really consumed by the Stream Health project. And so that's pretty much the only thing I've worked on. But I encourage you all to join. It's kind of this year of work on Stream Health is kind of culminating now with these final proposals going to the board on December 1st. And all of that information will also be updated to our public input site and available for public feedback outside of meeting as well. So yeah, I encourage you all to participate and get up to speed on what we've been doing. And I think I mentioned this last time, but one of the proposals is related to the new landowner education project that Christine started and you all were piloting. And I believe that will go forward regardless of what happens at the board meeting, because I'm hoping to have the resources to do it next fiscal year. So if the education group or the committee as a whole wants to think about the, what do we call it? Environmental Stewardship Hub on the website. It's up right now under community environmental, learn more about environmental stewardship. It's really just a basic skeleton framework right now. But our plan is to really build it out and to have all the landowner resources, really similar to the Stream Health landowner resources page. So anyway, this was your project that we're going to be, that was piloted and now hopefully will be formalized and really made, a bigger and more complete effort. So any feedback or suggestions you have or things that you think might be useful for that webpage, I will certainly be happy to collect and work on.
Kim, I have a suggestion or at least a question anyways. Is the term biodiversity, can that be worked into the jargon and the language and some of the things that you're working on associated with this, as opposed to just calling it environmental stewardship? We're kind of losing I think the sense of why we are the committee we are if we're not using that word very often.
Oh, yes. Well, so we do have a page for the Biodiversity Action Plan and for the Natural Heritage Committee, and that is all about the work of this committee. The environmental stewardship, we're calling it a hub, is about all of the things the committee is doing. So the Natural Heritage Committee and the Biodiversity Action Plan being part of that, but then also things like solid waste and climate and all these other components. And so, yeah, that will all be incorporated in there. So have one central hub where folks can go, and particularly resources for landowners that learn about, stewardship and cost share programs that are available to them and conservation easements and all of those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to add, Kim, just going to the Natural Heritage website just now and looking at those amazing pictures. A lot of those were taken by Gary Fleming. I think that it's just great to see them and just as a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing. And hopefully the people who visit the page will also understand that, because they really are they're really a wonderful addition. And it's nice how they kind of move through there. So what you're really looking for the feedback in general with the hub, or really just focused, like what we need to make sure we have this, and this. There's some, I've been looking at some of the website, for example, like the City of Alexandria and sort of how they've organized it. So I'm going to put that on my to-do list, is to explore some of those model websites and how they put them together.
Yeah, and we have time to build it. So yeah, if anything related to the organization, we do have some limitations just with the framework of the website that we use. But any suggestions you have about that accessibility and also content, I can't guarantee that it will all be included, but I would certainly try to incorporate everything that we can in the most easy to access and reference accessible way.
One thing that comes to mind for me right now is we put together a lot of those tips, or every day is Earth Day tips. We've called them lots of different things, but for example, people are raking up their leaves right now. So I just sent Serena, I said, Serena, can you pull out that great post that you made last fall and go ahead and put that up again? And then there will also be the bears in the garbage. And Leah did a couple ones that were about, like, if you find a baby bird, that's fallen out of a nest. So, if there's a way to have those monthly tips kind of, rather than having to ask somebody to repost them, that they almost come up on a calendar. These are the things in the month of October. These are the things to think about in your landscape, or helpful hints.
Yeah, that would be great. And we can definitely have that, I think, whatever we were calling it, tip of the month or something. But we can have those archived there, and the whole website is search-based. So that, they could come up as long as they're there
Yeah,
and tagged with the keywords.
yeah, I think that would be great. Well, thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
And so the next item on this, our agenda, is the solar ordinance. And Lonnie, I thought it was great that Lonnie actually brought it up. I wish he was here, but I found it really interesting when I looked at the DCR webpage, and what was it? It is the Native Plants Seed Business Plan and the Virginia Solar Site Native Plant Finder. All these things that are associated with trying to grow native plants in these solar fields. And Kim, you had offered, you said, to maybe show the slideshow that you had and give us a little bit of, since there are potentially like 3 sites here in Albemarle County. And a couple of them are pretty big in terms of acreage.
Yes. So I'm happy to share these slides. I'm gonna give a caveat that they're not my slides. I asked Bill Fritz today to share anything with me that he had, because he's been working on this topic and he's really familiar with it. And he wasn't able to come tonight, but he shared this PowerPoint with me. So I'm going to share it and read, his notes for you. But if you have questions that I can't answer, I'm happy to follow up with him. And it's real quick. So hopefully it'll just give you a little overview of the current status of solar in Albemarle County. So can you guys see my screen, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Try and make it full screen.
Yes, I can. Yeah, needs to be bigger. Yeah,
Okay.
bigger. That's better.
Are you seeing the notes panel or just the main screen?
Main
The
screen.
Okay, good. I mean, you're welcome to read the notes too, but I imagine that would be distracting. Okay. So let's see. So in the county, utility scale solar facilities are permitted only by special use permit in the rural areas district. This requires a formal application, a community meeting, a public hearing with the Planning Commission, and a public hearing with the Board of Supervisors. If the project is adjacent to an agricultural forestal district, an advisory meeting with the Agricultural Forestal District Committee is also held to receive their comments. And if the project is adjacent to an entrance corridor, an advisory meeting is held with the Architectural Review Board to receive their comments. If the special use permit is approved, then a site plan is required. The site plan is an administratively reviewed plan that shows the technical details involved in the construction, including the temporary erosion control measures and the permanent stormwater management facilities. So to date, these 2 projects have received special use permit approval in the county. Neither one of them has submitted a site plan. However, we expect submittal of both site plans soon based on our conversations with the applicants. And there's also one project that has submitted a special use permit and is currently under review, the Ivy Landfill. Solar facilities can occupy a lot of land. So this is the proposal for the Midway project. They need relatively gently sloping land with access to high voltage power lines. Those are shown in green here. And it's typical for the area of solar panels shown in blue to be broken up. This is due to the terrain. The panels are oriented either flat or slightly to the south. The terrain determines where panels can go. The area involved with the solar facility is larger than just the area for the panels. Surrounding the panels, a clear zone shown in red must be established to prevent shading of the panels. So while the county has no supplemental regulations or performance regulations for solar facilities, conditions can and are imposed with the approval of the special use permit. So these conditions establish performance requirements. Conditions limit areas of clearing, access, height of panels, location of transmission line interconnection, location of battery backup, and other features of the facility. Conditions also establish performance standards for sound, glare, and electrical interference. One project also has a limitation on the construction access. The condition limits the direction from which construction vehicles may access the site. The county's comprehensive plan has no direct comments about solar facilities. However, generally, the plan is supportive of renewable energy. This is an example of the kind of statement contained in the comp plan. And so for Kate's benefit, I'll read, they say, continue to demonstrate leadership in energy and carbon reductions at the local level, build on existing synergies by continued collaboration of city, county, UVA, and community partners, integrate the role of energy and carbon emissions in projects and planning, equip the community at all levels to make informed decisions about the impacts of carbon emissions and energy, and identify and promote actions that enable the community to reap the health, economic, and environmental benefits that accompany sound energy-based decisions. So, however, as is often the case in any comprehensive plan, there are potential conflicting comments. Everyone knows that a major factor in Albemarle County planning is protection of drinking water. So these are Bill's notes. Sometimes I think we should include this photo in the comprehensive plan. You can't see the photo. And say it's about this. There it is. The protection of the area's drinking water is a major factor in county planning. The installation of solar facilities in the drinking supply watershed is evaluated to ensure that the establishment of large impervious areas will not have negative impacts. The mitigating factors to the impervious nature of the panels is that unlike paved surfaces, there's no oil, grease, or rubber runoff. The area under the panels remains pervious, which helps to reduce runoff and aid in recharge. The use of tilting panels can also aid in preventing the establishment of a drip line that generates erosion and accelerates runoff. Due to the design of the solar facilities and the mitigation techniques that are used and required, the impact on drinking water resources of the region should not be adversely impacted. It's also important to note that these facilities have an expected lifespan of approximately 30 years. At the end of the life, the panels are removed and the site is returned as near as possible to its pre-development state. So this is where we are now. We have received a number of inquiries from potential providers, and they're primarily asking about the process and how prior applications have been received. The county can establish administratively the information that must be submitted with a special use permit application. We've developed and continue to develop standardized applications for solar facilities. The applicant is required to submit detailed information addressing a wide range of issues, and some of which I've listed here for you. So, Kate, for those who are on the phone, the slide says that we're holding informal discussions with multiple providers, and the discussions are general in nature. They've asked about the history of solar facilities in the county and the review process, and staff is also developing standards for applications. And this is, I think, directly relevant to the conversation that Lonnie proposed and what Christine followed up with. So these standards are based on best practices in other localities and the history of Albemarle County. The standards will require the submittal of specific information like visibility, sound, watershed impact, prime soils, a landscaping plan, fire department training, decommissioning plan, construction access, and property value impact. So that is the end. And I hope me just reading Bill's notes was helpful to you all to get a little overview and background of sort of where we are in the county, which is essentially developing those standards, it sounds like. we do not currently have an ordinance like the one that was shared for Louisa.
Yeah,
Is an
And-
ordinance of some kind under development?
Not to my knowledge, Kate, and the reason why that as far as I can tell, is that we have not had a lot of instances of this, as you can see from the slideshow. And so there's advantages and disadvantages to having a policy versus just establishing conditions that would be required for approval of the use of the special use. And so I don't know if you want me to go through those, but that's essentially the answer right now, is that no. And I think partly a lot of the reason is that, you know, to establish a policy for something that only happens very infrequently is a lot of time and resources, and also limits flexibility in terms of requirements or conditions that could be applied. So if it were something that became more frequent, I think that could be something that's explored, certainly. But at this point, if there's just, you know, one or two, then typically I don't think there would move to developing an ordinance for it.
But best practices or such could be included in the approval process for the special use permit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that they are working on, and that was the last slide that Bill had there, which is developing those standards, you know, that could be applied, and yeah, best practices for that are conditional for the approval of that special use permit.
Do you know if any other areas have found good practices related to, say, plantings underneath native, low-lying, not needing full sun plants that could just cover the ground under there?
yeah.
Yes, I mean, Christine shared these great resources. I encourage you to go and look at the links that she shared. I was watching the webinar today, that DCR webinar, and it's really amazing all the work they've put into that. For localities to have this used as a reference. And so they've developed these just amazing tools and checklists and native plant, you know, resources for different sites. So there's really a lot out there that could be used.
One thing I just want to add that I found very exciting is that they really are encouraging local ecotype plantings. And the seed is not available for those big plantings. So they actually have this native plant seed business plan. And so the idea is trying to encourage farmers to actually go into the business of planting these local ecotypes and harvesting the seed, and then being able to sell the seed to plant for these solar installations. So I thought that was really exciting. And so
Yeah,
maybe this will create a market for that seed.
that would be good, because I just find a lot of solar fields like deserts, you know. Everything's mowed and grass and you know, it's kind of depressing. So maybe this will be hope for the future, these sort of things. As far as
Yeah, and then, oh, sorry, I just want to mention another thing from the DCR website that and webinar that Christine shared is that they've developed this certification process. So there's actually checklists that you can use to determine whether a proposed or retrofitted solar facility site is, you know, meeting what pollinator smart guidelines, and actually can be certified that it is. So I think that's really interesting and progressive idea.
And it's just a great sales pitch. So it's one way to say to the community, not only are we going to be generating green energy, but we're also going to be creating this habitat.
right.
I mean, I have the same questions. Is there enough sun under the panels to support those pollinators? But I mean,
What about, I thought it was between the panels.
yeah, well, it is between the panels, and it sounds like they naturally have to have a pretty good distance between the panels in order to mow,
Yes.
right? Because they're going to need to bring those mowers through. So, but that makes sense. And also in terms of ground, preventing the runoff from those impervious surfaces. So that makes sense too. One of my big concerns is I don't want to see our forests being cut down for,
Right.
and so I would really love to see that as one of the like planning guides in there, that that we would give priority to, that we would really discourage siting these solar farms on forested land. I mean, I can't
Exactly.
imagine anybody going to the trouble, but I'm sure it could happen, right?
Shouldn't the same go for some manner of productive farmland?
Well, it certainly could. And I think that that is one of the questions there.
I think
I
that was
still
one of the
think-
things that came out of the COP26 was the decision to reduce continuing to harvest forests and for the sake of lumber or for clearing for
Farming. Yeah.
farming, right? So, we'd be right in
Cattle.
line to follow up with something like that. I was going to mention, I forgot I was on mute, but I was going to mention that since we've been talking about conservation, landscaping and mowing and so forth, and now we're talking about a piece of land that is being developed for specific use. Is there a way to, or does it make sense to address conservation, landscaping and mowing with that regard?
Yeah, I think
Is
so.
that something we should include or should push to have included?
So Kim, can I ask you, is there room for comment on these, like these criteria? And who would be the person to send those comments to?
Yes, I think so. I think you could contact Bill directly and Scott. They are both working on developing that. And so I would recommend that. And we were kind of going back and forth today, and so I was sharing some of those resources that we were talking about in the DCR resources. And so I think that would be a really, interesting direction to go to. But I also wanted to share, you can also, share feedback with me and I'll share it with them. Maybe when things are more developed, they can come and present to this group so that you can provide feedback directly as well. So that's another option. But on the mowing point, I want to just quickly share in the DCR guide. Can you see my screen too? Let's see, not yet. Are you able to see
Yes.
the graph?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So this is in the in DCR's Pollinator Smart Comprehensive Manual. But I thought this was really interesting because there's actually all this research, about having these mowed lawn areas in between the panels versus restoration and just the cost savings associated with that. So I think there's really a really strong argument for that, economic argument as well. And this is the guide, by the way, that is this whole comprehensive manual that DCR and DEQ have put together.
That's on their website.
Yeah, it's on the links that Christine sent earlier,
Okay.
and we can resend. But there's a great presentation about all of these resources that they have developed, and the checklists and the certification program and the native seed initiative that Christine was mentioning as well. I got really fired up about it when I watched it. It's very exciting.
I was too. It was a couple of weeks ago, and Kim, I'm just really glad you shared that graph because I remember seeing it and was like, oh my gosh, look at that. You can save money by not mowing.
Right. Yeah, and it's all related to the frequency of mowing because the native meadows in between the solar rows are only mowed once a year, right? So
Yeah. And the other thing was apparently bringing those mowers through damaged the panels. Like, there's always human error and mistakes made. And as those mowers are moving through there, so reducing the mowing also will help preserve the structures and the panels themselves.
If there's people that come through and mow like the guys that mow our yards, heaven help them.
Exactly.
Mow,
Peggy,
Um,
I didn't catch it.
blow, and go. That's what we call those landscape services. Rush in, mow, run the blower around, and get out.
Great. So Kim, you shared those resources, and I'm trying to think, maybe Mike, if you and I we could maybe put our heads together and think about some of the things we would add to those recommendations, or if anybody else, maybe I could even just could do an invitation if anybody has something that they think is important to add or to reiterate.
I'm wondering about the profitability of the solar panels and what are the systems and what's feasible to ask the solar companies to do. So when Mike was mentioning about the forest, or maybe it was Christine was mentioning about forests, and we don't want to, theoretically, we would prefer not to have solar panels go into a forested area. Well, then there's a whole concept of companies that are required to compensate, say, for wetlands. When they develop a wetlands area, they have to create wetlands somewhere else, but that costs money. And then there's also, I had a question for Kim if she knew about an aspect of the deconstruction afterwards. I would assume that there's no requirement for the solar companies to have a fund set aside to decommission their equipment at the end of its life in case the company goes out of business.
Oh, that is such an important consideration. Awesome point.
I could just see,
Yeah, it's a really good
Much.
question because of the long time frame. The only project I've reviewed is that Midway project. And, some of the things that we looked at in the review was it already on open land, and it was going on to abandoned agricultural fields versus clearing of forest, which, certainly and I'm sure Scott Clark would have had additional comments if it were related to clearing of forest. And then that was the other thing that I paid specific attention to, was the decommissioning plan. But that did not include anything to my knowledge about funding. So that's a really good question.
I've had that concern about the wind turbines as well. The wind turbines even more so than the solar, because to take those things apart and move those heavy things somewhere, and with the price of scrap metal for decades, it's been so low that it's not like they could even sell the stuff. Wouldn't be worth the cost to transport it somewhere. But since the solar industry is new, I'm thinking, how much can you ask them to do financially? But that, because then also requiring a company to have a slush fund is not the right word, but to have money set aside for decommissioning also would push preference to larger companies rather than small companies. And we wouldn't necessarily want to do that either. I don't know. I just thought I would throw that out there. It's something to think about.
well, you're suggesting a comprehensive plan for the land, which I think is a great idea. I think we should do more and more to get towards that, because you're right. If it gets decommissioned, somebody goes out of business or changes business strategy, I could just see these abandoned areas and people just walk away from them, and they've not done anything to them once they leave.
Right.
And whether it's a company that decides to do something different, or if the state takes it over, or a local county takes some land back, there should be a plan in place for what to do with it.
Yeah.
Just like we do with military bases. If you're going to give a military base back, there's a whole slew of laws and regulations that people have to go through to determine who gets that land and what they do with it.
I hadn't thought about who gets the land. Yeah, I was just thinking about the cost of removing everything and getting it to a facility where components can be recycled, and then having to dispose of a lot of the rest of it.
I'd like to see the requirement for recycling on the far end. We don't do that cradle to grave requirement in very, very many things, but they should certainly go with anything new, just to make sure that the componentry involved in these things, some of which I think is quite polluting itself once it's outside of its casement, just to make sure that that doesn't end up in an improper location.
Oh, good point. So as Michael was saying, a comprehensive plan for decommissioning. The other thing too, solar technology, I know it's stabilized a good bit in the last few years, but the previous 15, 20 years, the technology was changing every couple of years. And so even though facilities being installed now have a 30-year lifespan, they could easily be abandoned for much better technology that would, utilize smaller spaces, less equipment, various scenarios.
Well, I think we've got a good list to begin with. And yeah, those are all really great.
Hey,
And
Christine, I'd be glad to help you. So just let me know.
all right, great. Well, I try to I know that Kim always has great notes, but we make note of that and have people think about other things to add.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that we need to encourage more use of solar on rooftops and places
Right.
that are already built, rather than taking fresh land and turning it into big solar panel.
Our
field,
county schools and libraries and other things,
Yeah.
those buildings haven't been
All
adapted
flat.
yet.
Yeah.
Parking lots.
Piedmont Community College, parking lot.
Parking
mean,
garages,
geez.
yeah,
Yeah,
hospitals.
exactly. They're all flat roofs are perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
The solar
Yeah,
companies
and-
might want to steer clear of some of that though, because they wouldn't own the land, they wouldn't own the property, and they'd have to jump through more hoops dealing with property
No,
owners.
this is
building
encouraging.
managers.
Yeah, I'm just encouraging.
Oh, I
businesses.
agree. I agree. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I could think from a business standpoint, it'd be easier for somebody to just go buy some cheap land somewhere in a really rural area close to transmission lines. The property values are already degraded because of the transmission line, so they can get it cheaper. And if it's kind of abandoned land that doesn't have the trees, because cutting the trees down would cost money, that would be more, make more sense for their business plan. But what y'all are saying is better though, the better way to go, right? Put it in the buildings.
Well, I was pleased to see it's going to be on the landfill that they are.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna mention that, yeah, that is actually the other project that I reviewed, which is on the Ivy landfill. It's a capped landfill, so it's kind of the perfect place to have panels, in my opinion. But I also just want to come back to a point that Kate made, which is about loss of farmland. And I think that is an issue too, just in Virginia generally. I'm not sure how much of an issue it would be in Albemarle, but certainly in other parts of Virginia, the companies are paying farmers much more than they would make from harvesting crops along those high transmission lines, so high voltage transmission lines. So they are, there is a loss of farmland, but there's a time frame for the life of those panels, so it's potential for it to come back, but it is consideration.
Do you know what the latest rate of loss is? I mean, I think people have captured that so that they say, per minute, per day, per week, per month, whatever, we're losing so much farmland.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you guys for this discussion. And we're going to move on to our working groups. And the education and outreach, we did not meet as a whole working group, so we didn't have a public meeting. But Mike and I did meet and just had some discussions about the work that he was doing with the spotted lanternfly HOA presentations. And we talked a little bit about conservation mowing. And I actually, if you guys don't, can I share my screen? Yeah, let me see if I can do this right here. There we go. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
All right, oops, there it is. All right, so I just, today, I just went over to Darden Tow. And so I just wanted to show you what actually, oops, let me go back, sorry. Okay, so for those, I don't know how many people have actually been out to look at, so this is a year of not mowing. And I hope you can see in the background, there's the power line, transmission line. You can see where it has been mowed, and then you can see the place where they didn't mow. And of course, it's just all fescue. I'm not a grass person, but I imagine that's what it is. But I did, one thing that just a couple things that I just want to have people notice, the grass is not really tall. It's not really that tall. I was able to easily walk through it. There are places where it's kind of packed down, and it's really green right now.
It's
And I
pretty
did
good,
see, yeah, it looks pretty good. But I just want to point out, I did see some zinnias growing there, just out of the blue. I don't know if somebody, threw out some seed.
No, that's
And but there were
gaillardia.
well,
That's
oh, I-
gaillardia. That's
no,
gaillardia.
it's a zinnia.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's what it might have been when I
Yeah.
first looked at it, but they're definitely zinnias.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's like 3 or 4 zinnia plants, and then I'm pretty, it's a type of aster, the one that's all green. I know this picture isn't that great, but I did find those little asters out there, but that was pretty much it in terms of any like little native plant that might have poked out somewhere.
I know they say that, you stop mowing and nature will come back, and that's just bull. It's just, I mean, if it's been planted in fescue for decades, that's just,
Yeah,
you're not gonna.
yeah, so
Yeah.
and then, oops, sorry about this, you guys. But there's also, if you go to the area that's right next to the river, if you go around kind of towards the Lewis and Clark Center, there is just a little patch that's along the hill that they didn't mow. And there were some like golden ragwort in the spring. And there were a few more little natives in there. I didn't really see anything when I looked at it now, but then you can see along this ditch, along the road, this is not a very good picture, but there were goldenrod, there was some grasses, there's Chinese lespedeza in there as well, but there's some blackberries. But now I realize why that area wasn't mowed, because it's full of riprap. But when you look at that landscape, it's actually really quite lovely. And so this is sort of an example of what could potentially be.
The problem with that
And this is,
lespedeza,
yeah.
that lespedeza is really bad. I mean, if you go out to Wegmans where they planted all those trees,
Oh.
it's nothing but lespedeza. It's that Chinese, which is really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to control it except with poison.
Well, I went to the Martha Jefferson Hospital, and I don't know how many of you have looked at what they did there with those native meadows.
Yeah, I've been there.
And yeah, so they've got some great plantings in there, but unfortunately the lespedeza has invaded a good part of that. And they did a really nice job for enabling people to have these trees as memorials. So they've got some beautiful native trees, but there is quite a bit of the lespedeza. And yeah, I don't know how to really to treat that, because they've got a pretty strong root system.
They sure do. Yeah, it's really a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, part of the reason I'm sharing this, I'm going to stop sharing, but I just wanted you guys to see what is there. But
what's better than cutting it?
yeah, I mean, there is, I agree, actually. And it kind of breaks up the landscape and the monotony of the landscape. And even though we are not getting a lot of natives in there, or any, actually, just 1 or 2, but it does break up the landscape, and it could perhaps provide some cover. And there was a reduced carbon footprint with not mowing it, right? And so there had to have been a savings in terms of labor, gasoline, maintenance on your mowers, et cetera, et cetera. So, if people can tolerate it, I think that there is some value and just continuing to find areas where you can say, let's put this area on a different mowing schedule. And the second set of pictures, they have a bluebird trail there. They kind of mowed a path through those areas. So then one could actually kind of walk through. And there was a point in the summer where the seed heads were actually quite tall. So it kind of changed up the landscape and had that sense of being in the taller grasses. But I've asked to meet with Jim Barber and just to begin to say, is there a role that the Natural Heritage Committee can play in terms of, and I've spoken, Kim and I talked about this, the possibility of being able to be the eyes on the ground to identify areas that we can expand the conservation mowing and actually pinpoint those on a Google map so that we can present, these are the places that we've identified that are good candidates. So it's really, I want to meet with Jim to say, what criteria, like, I would say the criteria would be steep areas that are difficult to mow, that are not trafficked. So perhaps we could start there.
Well, maybe we
With
could encourage
size?
him to buy some goats, not go back to his mowing.
What
Sorry.
I'm doing, I just started intensive rotation grazing. Our goats, we're on a whole new system now with them, and it's been so cool. We're like maybe 8 weeks in,
Mm.
and it's been really, really fun to see. So we move them every 3 days, and they're just in a really small enclosure. But it's been so cool to see the difference that they make, and apparently it increases the forage by 50%. Like, it's really good for the landscape. But I'm also curious about how to sort of incorporate natives and incorporate, things other than fescue in the system. But I've been thinking about this conservation mowing thing, like, oh, that's the next step, is getting goats in there.
Right. Giving
Well,
some farmers some jobs.
Yeah.
The natural resources, I mean, they'll come in. Fire is also a good way to control some of the, invasive or plants, and then try to reseed it with native warm season grasses and stuff. It can be done, and we were trying to do that at Ivy Creek years ago. But fire is a good way to deal with it if you can have a controlled burn.
Yeah, I was actually looking up Lesbediza, how to control it, and I read this whole study, and fire does not have any impact in terms of controlling it. Because I was trying to think how to do it on my little postage stamp.
So it's
Deal.
just, was it Roundup is the best way, or?
And it's just really difficult, and they have a pretty hefty root system. What they recommended is when it's putting up its flowers, and when
Yeah.
it's using up a lot of its energy at that point, to mow it at that moment, which is kind of interesting because that usually happens in August, like late August. And so I was talking to Laurel Williamson about like when to mow some of those the retention ponds and those areas around for the stormwater ponds. And if you think about if you mow twice a year, maybe it's the end of August.
That's a
And
good time
maybe
to
you can,
mow.
that would
Yeah.
be helpful controlling the Lesbediza and the stilted Japanese stilt
Stiltgrass.
grass. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
that's
do
a
it
good time
again
to
at
mow.
the end of February. So
That's good.
Can I ask, with this program, is the sort of goal to maintain it sort of as a prairie, maintain it as a field, or is there any like space for sort of rewilding and sort of allowing native trees to sort of grow up through some areas? Or
Emma,
is it just to keep it a field?
I think that is a really great question. And you're absolutely right. On those hillsides, that could be a forest with some trees. And does it have to remain as an open space, as a field?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's nothing that would keep us from going back and fixing mistakes. I mean, all this is a slow process, and if you identify it up front, you could have several years to work on it.
And certainly in terms of maintenance, you'd have to control for the invasives, but if you have a forest there, that could be potentially easier to maintain.
Especially if they're oaks.
Yeah.
And it's not really, it's not exactly a program yet, right? Because Christine's just been piloting it here and there. But one thing we talked about before, and that would be a really good part of it, Emma, is this like more comprehensive plan for all of the county lands. So where mowing could be reduced, but maybe also, creating pollinator habitat in some areas, and then maybe labeling some areas for this sort of rewilding, just letting them grow back up, or planting native trees if they're, if we can find resources to do that. Maybe, with the climate program team. So I think that would be a really great next step beyond just the not mowing, right?
Mhm.
Kim, is there a net zero goal for the county yet?
There are emissions reduction goals. I don't know if there's a net zero goal, but yeah,
Maybe we could
I
help
don't
push
know.
that a little. Sorry. Maybe cut you off.
Oh, you're
You-
muted, Christine.
You had shared with me that that was perhaps down the line, the opportunity to begin to look more carefully at creating a more comprehensive plan with taking in really focusing, combining the BAP and the climate action plan together as the basis for moving forward with this, looking at those county public lands, which could also potentially include the Albemarle County Public Schools as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I mentioned this last time, but I think that our new Parks and Rec planner is going to be the perfect person to collaborate with on this, at least as a starting point with the county parks, and then other county lands as well. Like you were talking to Laurel, I know she's really interested in that for stormwater facilities where mowing reduction could happen, and then schools as well. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Has that new position been filled already? Is there a person in it?
I don't know. The interviews were completed maybe 2 weeks ago, so I would assume
Oh, so it's really
that
fresh.
is in process. What's that?
Oh, okay. It's a really fresh change. Okay.
Very fresh. Yeah, I don't know who it is yet, but I assume they're close to announcing that. Yeah.
Great. Well, so I just want to finish up with a couple of other things that, well, one of the other thing that Mike and I talked about was, and I think it's really, Emma, you were the genesis of this, thinking about like the library system and the fact that is there some way to partner with the libraries? We know Scottsville Library's got they have a little garden space in front that's pretty wild looking. And I almost wonder if they had begun planting it with some natives. And then Mike said that there's a garden that's between the Historical Society and the downtown library. So is there a possibility of beginning a conversation with the library system? And I just thought, wow, this is a great place to help educate people, right, about native plants. And so perhaps one could start with asking if there's a way to, or if they have an interest in planting those landscapes with native plants, or just even having like a postage stamp demonstration garden there. And then Emma asked a really good question of me. She's like, we need how do we have a program set up? Who would actually do the planting? Who would do the maintenance? What can we offer if we step forward and we begin to engage people with these conversations? And I think, Mike, it seems the logical place would be to gauge the master gardeners and
Right.
if that would be something that they would be willing.
Right, I think we talked about the committee, the library, the historical society, and PMG, at least to start with. So there's at least 4 organizations that potentially could come together to make something happen. I'm a member of the historical society and volunteer, and I've developed a relationship with Tom Chapman. So I was going to approach him about this space behind McIntyre Library. It's got a brick framework that is part of it. And there, at some point, somebody did something there, but it looks to me like it hasn't been maintained for a while. And so to me, it looks like an opportunity for a small scale project.
So those
see
are
what
the
happens.
things that we are up to. And I just want to report, because I think this is interesting. I was at the Yancey Community Center for their Love Albemarle event. And I saw that there was a bunch of native planting in front of the Yancey Community Center. And I guess Rep was involved with that. And I want to reach out to him and find out, where is the funding, how did that come about? So, and of course, there's some great native plantings around the Albemarle County office building too. There's a great source of seeds. I see that there's some common milkweed, and I've been actually over there collecting some seed pot. I hope that's legal to do that.
Yeah, and there's other county facilities. Rep is responsible for all of those projects. He's done that pretty much single-handedly. So yeah, that he would be a good person to talk to about that. And he's really interested in this, countywide planning as well.
Yeah, maybe we could get him in as a guest to talk to us with some tips. All right. I know, Emma, is there anything you'd like to report back, or Mike, anything that I've missed?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I was in the Scottsville, speaking with the Scottsville town manager the other day, and I learned that they are putting in a bunch of native plantings in the town. And there's a woman, I can't remember her name right now, but they're working with this woman, and they have scanned the Center for Arts and Nature. That's they have some land that's near Scottsville, and they are working on putting in some sculptures there on the land, and also it's all sort of rewilding, but they're also putting in native plants there too, which is cool to see. So.
That's great. Thank you, Emma, for sharing that. That's really exciting.
Yep.
All right, well, we are going to close up with our report, and we'll move on to the policy group. Or, I'm sorry, wildlife corridors. Leah, we're going to hand it to you.
Okay. Let's see. Well, 2 days ago, I'd be talking about the Bobcat study right now, the proposed study. And 2 days ago, Brett Jesmer, the professor at Virginia Tech, and I did a Zoom call with a reviewer from the Bama Works Fund, the grant group that we, or sort of the grant group that we applied to. And it went really well. She was really happy. Was very enthusiastic. It looks really good. They did ask us, as they're asking all the people that they're interviewing, if we'd be willing to take or accept less than the amount of the grant money we asked for, because they have they've got $7 million to spend, but they had almost, well, a little over 10 million, or sorry, a little over 105 million requests for money. So yeah, that's big money, which is nice. But anyway, so we're waiting to hear, and we did let them know that Brett needs to hire a graduate student to do the work, and the work's supposed to start in January. And they're saying originally we were supposed to know right about now about who's receiving the money, but now they're saying beginning of December. And by beginning of December, Brett needs to be putting out information to recruit a student. So the woman put in the notes that the grant money is staffing dependent, or that we are staffing dependent, that we don't have to have the money by early December, but we need to know something as soon as possible. So we'll just see where that goes. And one wonderful thing that happened in perfect timing for that was I had met with Carolyn Schuyler at Wild Rock, and she was very excited about the Bobcat study. Those of you that may not know where Wild Rock is, it is probably a good 15 minutes north of Whitehall. So it's in a very rural area, and it's an outdoor learning educational experience for children. It's all about learning about nature through interactive play. And Carolyn Schuyler is amazing. She's really, really sharp. And her background is psychology, and she started Wild Rock because of the need for, peaceful isn't the right word, but healing places, I guess, for kids, as well as wanting kids to understand more about the natural environment. But she doesn't have a science background. So she was very excited to hear about this proposed Bobcat study and asked if I would actually work with her on, assuming we get some data that we can use from the Bobcat study. She wanted me to work with them to put together like a workshop for probably middle school students, where we would teach the kids, or get the kids thinking of doing critical thinking for decision making about land management, for land conservation, but managing land. And so we were tossing around some ideas, and I threw out the idea of having and I am not an educator. So, we get further down this road, Christine and others of you, I'll be saying, hey, give us some ideas. But I threw out the idea of having a visual, maybe like a laminated map, and we provide kids with information on bobcat habits, like their habitat use, and maybe some other animals as well, like particularly prey species. And then we have on the map some of the areas around Wild Rock, which shows neighbors, and say, well, this neighbor has a garden, and this neighbor has so many acres of farmland, and this neighbor is going to change and have some different land uses proposed for the area, and have the kids use their reasoning skills to identify where would wildlife move within this arena. Like they might go to an agricultural field because that's where there's going to be rodents. But if a landowner is going to turn their property into a vineyard, we would look for some science-based data to give the kids, so the kids could use a thinking process to get them really involved and engaged with thinking like an animal and what their needs are.
They should discuss how that solar farm is going to change the wildlife habitat and how the animals move.
I actually thought about that when we were talking about the solar. Yeah. So that's it. That's the report.
Thank you, Leah. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, well, and it was great too that the interviewee knows not only Carolyn at Wild Rock, but a lot of her family owns property apparently right around Wild Rock. So she knew exactly where it was, and it was just really good synergy.
Nice.
But she's not the decision maker, so we'll see.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. And Kate, I know you guys did not meet, but we have like 20 minutes left. I don't know how difficult it would be for you to share that list of criteria for the important sites.
I wonder if I can just share. Am I able to share? Do I have
Yeah.
those powers?
Mm-hmm.
maybe can just share a portion of this document right here in front of me. Let me see if I can do that. The whole thing is a bit messy, but just criteria for adoption of new sites. Give me 1 second. I wonder if I can share just that. Let's see. Maybe this one. I think that's it. Okay, can you see the criteria for adoption of new sites? Or no?
No. But look, we
Okay.
see something else. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it was 9. Understood. I don't know what I was showing you there. That was awful. Here it is. Okay. Yes?
Okay. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. We had, a considerable discussion just about the concept of ranking, since properties and, spaces can be so different. They could be on a list for so many different reasons. And so we just talked through ways that we might identify them to be of a certain type or their general value. And, these were, some things that we came up with, not really for ranking purposes, but more for categorizing. So that's kind of where we were.
Yeah, I think
For,
this
for
is,
what it is.
I think this is really what we want to focus on, is just having some criteria for adopting a new site. And that's spot on for what I think for this conversation.
Okay.
So
yes, I'm sorry. I was kind of speaking to something totally different, so pardon me.
yeah. Do you want to just talk us through this?
It was not an extensive part of our conversation. Frankly, we just kind of made a list. This was our 2 months ago meeting. We did, discuss the need to have someone visit, because we do think it's important that someone, who knows the group. It doesn't have to necessarily be a member. We have plenty of friends of Natural Heritage Committee who are very qualified to provide guidance to the group about what they've found. And then, various considerations that may, affect the viability of the site. Invasive species, is that something that's recoverable? Is it something people are working on? Is it a priority at all? Or is it not a consideration? That simply might affect that. General health goes to all manner of different, pieces. And then the largesse of the community we might find there. Is it, a site that has a number of priority species? Is there simply one piece of evidence of a given species, or is it a larger community that could, be protective of that species going forward? And then the categorization pieces, I obviously have touched on a bit already, to understand for our purposes how these pieces fit together and the value of the different kinds of sites that have been identified, and then some sort of tracking mechanism over time. What we know about them, whether we go back to them, how we're gathering data. I mean, Christine's always been very good about sharing data about site visits. Others of us have not done that quite as much. Is there a mechanism for making sure that we have that value over time recognized?
And can I ask, could you give us some examples when you talk about like the general health of the site?
As we discussed it, it was more, I think, seeing the value of the site itself. There are places that might be recognized because a certain species exists there. Maybe it is a protected species. Maybe it is, for some reason, been identified either federally or locally as something to protect. But is that a priority based on everything else about the site? Is it an industrial site that is simply not going to be viable. There are so many pieces that go into what surrounds it. Is it going to exist 5 years from now, no matter what we do?
Mhm. This makes me think, when we talk about invasive species, I think about areas that are important to protect are those that have some buffer. And where I live in southern Albemarle, a lot of the land was forested. There wasn't a lot of agriculture, so I feel like that there are areas where there just aren't a lot of invasives, and so they have a buffer that prevents sort of that invasion of, and so they have almost like a natural protection. Like, for example, Biscuit Run, certain areas of Biscuit Run that are quite a ways away from those old agricultural fields
Mm.
as another potential factor.
There's some things that I had
Yeah.
thought about as you were talking about it. Easements adjacent to or on the site, overlays, impacts by other natural or man-made resources. I never heard anybody talk about a soil test, but I mean, if you're looking to see what's been done there or what the condition of the soil test, that might be something to consider. You did mention what surrounds the site. I did have a question about that. That's a good thing to consider. And Christine, you just mentioned buffers, so I think that is pretty comprehensive.
Does anyone else have thoughts about this or comments?
I have a comment, which is just that it seems like there's two categories of things here. And one is, is this, does this raise to the level of being an important site? So is it an important site? And what are the criteria for determining whether we want to track it as an important site or not? And then the second thing is, if it is an important site, what do we do next? In terms of, having site visits and tracking over time, mapping, those kinds of things. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it seems like two categories of things that need to sort of be outlined here.
Sounds like you need a flow chart to kind of step through the process, or that could be beneficial. Some people don't want to do those kinds of things, but they're just a little too bureaucratic, but it certainly would help you walk through it, their process.
Yeah. And it also makes me think, similar to the ACE program, how there are points associated with, you get certain points. For example, we talk about, okay, are there rare plants? Like you could get points for the rare plants. There's a natural plant community that's intact? That gives you a certain number of points.
I think it's a great idea to get to a decision.
Yeah, to help get to that decision. And then you could say, is it just a less than 1 acre? Right? As opposed to 1 to 20 acres or 20 to 100 acres, into those categories where you'd get just a few more points for all those things.
And that kind of takes us back to a ranking scenario, which may be of value, especially for decision-making purposes. But that's where we just have to be really careful by what criteria we would rank so that we wouldn't miss. I think things are always inherently missed with ranking by numbers. So my concern is just that things would get missed, but as long as that was considered, I'm sure it'll work no matter what.
Is it ranking, or is it just giving sort of a threshold for designation? So you need
however
to
it's managed, yeah.
Yeah, at least 10 points. And so that would give you in a variety of ways to have those 10 points add up. So maybe there's just one rare plant, but it has these other factors that we value, and we add up all the points, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good way. That'd be a very good way to use a point system as a threshold versus trying to say that there were 100 things on the list and this is the most valuable over these other ones. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like your idea a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, you could also develop a kind of checklist, just like a yes, no, does it have a state rare plant or animal? And, does it have enough acreage or, to support a natural community? And, if it meets a certain number of those criteria, not necessarily ranking them higher or less than another, but then it could be, that's how we determine whether it's an important site or not.
Actually, I like that. Just a checklist, and then you're not assigning a number to any of those things. It's just a yes or no. And we have a certain threshold for, you have to say yes to at least 3 of those items on that list, or 4 of the items on the list to move
And then
forward.
another checklist for what you do, like mapping, create the Google Docs and all of that to
Mhm.
incorporate it into
I
the
agree.
system.
I agree with Michael. It's definitely flow chart time.
So,
Mm.
Kate, do you think the policy committee, would this be something that you guys could take on and report back to us? Like flesh it out a little bit more?
I think this is, certainly, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have other things that we have prioritized a bit, but I don't see why this doesn't fit in there also.
What more do you need from the rest of the committee?
Well, I think we just have to make the time to meet. That's really our struggle. So we'll try to figure that out maybe during lunch times or something like that, where we can find Carolyn and make that work.
And I think it would be, once we've got some of that worked out, we can apply it to Emma's place.
Yay.
That's a great idea. You can pilot project this with something that's already existing. That'd be a great way to do it.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to put some of our other important sites to this test as well.
Sure.
To
All of them
say,
eventually, right?
yeah, the ones that are already designated, and say, yeah, you're right.
This is really as important as we thought it was.
Yeah, yeah. And some of them change over time, and they do not fulfill all the criteria that, because they've been mowed over or they've been developed or something else like that has happened.
I think that would be really useful exercise to do before the update of the biodiversity action plan, which is supposed to be in 2023. So I don't know if all of the sites could be evaluated physically or not, but it would be something to think about.
Yeah. Well, Kate, I want to thank you. And I know it's difficult to find that time to move forward, but I think you got some good bones for that. And
Well, we have lots of stuff we want to talk about, starting with, Chesapeake Bay action plan and agriculture and all those pieces too. So we have tons of stuff on our list. I still would like to discuss with someone, and I'm not sure exactly who that is, about the whole meeting at that level being restricted when there's literally no decision-making power. This is a decision-making body that actually votes. The Board of Supervisors is the same way, but 3 people getting together to say, hey, we want to take this back to talk to our committee about it. There's, so I still haven't figured out who to take that to, but because all it does is stifle useful content.
well,
So if you have
agreed.
ideas on who I should take that to, let me know.
In North Carolina, when I was after I'd been elected, we had access to the School of Government at UNC. Is there a School of Government that municipal officials use in Virginia? Is it at UVA? Is it at Virginia Tech? Is it somewhere in the state? They would know what the right answer is to some of your questions, Kate, I think.
I will look into that. That's a good idea. I thought of writing a nice little missive to Mark Herring, but I think he's frying other fish right now.
Well, he may have time to fry fish. I don't know. Unfortunately. But
Yeah.
the-
And I think that also we're still in a state. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just interject. You might want to reach out to somebody in our legal department that can explain it to where it makes more sense. I don't think it's a county rule. I think it's I don't quote me, but it may be a Robert's Rule of Order type of thing that you have, if you have so many people, whether you're making decisions or not, because we're a county, you're representing the county, is that this group is part of the county, you know, you're appointed by the county, you have to have it available to anybody to listen in that wants to. I know that doesn't make it easy for you all because of the times that I'm available. I'm very willing to, see what we can come up with. I mean, just when, if you can pick some dates and next week I have Monday through Wednesday that I work. I have 2 meetings back to back Monday, PC meeting on Tuesday, and 2 meetings back to back on Wednesday. And then Thursday, it's Veterans Day, so we're closed. So, it's just hard, but I am definitely willing to work with you all.
We absolutely know you have been nothing less than incredibly helpful, Carolyn. And
Well,
that
Thank you. I mean, I want to be.
you
That's
have been
what-
fabulous.
Thank you. But I can also reach out to the attorney that works with the planning commission and maybe get him to kind of put it in writing, and then I can share it with you. Maybe it makes sense. And then if not, we can.
Let me do some reaching out and
Okay.
let me do some reaching out beyond these folks, because I think there's some interpretation going on and I need to figure out where the interpretation point is. That's what I need to sort out. So I'll go see what I can find and I'll report back.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have all the documents that have been written also, Carolyn, so I'm happy to share those, by the county attorney and, the folks who have made these decisions. So I think I shared them before, but I can share them again if they're not handy. And that gives the explanation from the attorneys of why the rules are what they are.
Kate, you're not alone in this concern. I had this issue all the time for 4 years. Never got a
Tim, if you do have-
satisfactory answer about it, but we kept going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just the layers that I'm like, Kim, if you do have that easy at hand, if you can shoot that to me, that'd be super helpful. And then I'll start there. Thanks
Mike,
so
why
much.
was it 4 years? What was the 4-year scenario?
I had a 4-year term as a municipal elected councilman in North Carolina.
And even, but you were elected, that's why. Okay,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
a
Kate-
municipal official.
okay.
And I just want to ask Carolyn if any word about when the county is going to begin to allow in-person meetings.
I have not heard anything. The last I heard was October, and of course that's come and gone. I don't know what meetings will go back to in person and what meetings will stay Zoom. I think it's going to be a mixture.
Yeah.
I think. Now, I could be wrong, but nobody has said anything. I'm going to say maybe spring before we do anything. I know the Board of Supervisors is kind of doing a hybrid thing. And the Planning Commission is still virtual. I haven't heard any, word on that either. So I'm thinking that at this point, probably nothing's going to be decided till after the first of the year.
Makes
so
sense.
close to Christmas now and meetings slow down in November and December, you know, all the holidays and such going on.
Mm.
So, yeah, no, I have not heard anything. That was a long answer to, very
Yeah.
short.
And I think that what we do know that I think all of the meetings are going to be hybrid. So we will have the, you know, the Zoom option still going forward, but like, you know, Carolyn, we'll let you know as soon as we hear anything.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that I think that would make it easier, like if there's a platform where we don't have to necessarily have to have staff there, Carolyn, you monitoring the meeting. But I know maybe that ship has just completely sailed because
You're gonna have to have one, you're gonna have to have me or Kim or some staff member. So like I said, I am very willing and will try my best to do what I can, but you know, it's just, there's so many hours in a day and so many
There's
meetings.
only one of you.
So I don't
And
think
I
the
think
county's
you are
gonna
an
let,
evening work all the
Yeah.
time, Carolyn, every evening, my goodness.
so I know that the county will not let non-county people sign into our Zoom accounts.
Hmm.
So, and it has to be on our Zoom account so that we can post it. You know, we ran into those problems and then you paid. And so, you know, it may be that some of these small meetings like this would have to be held at the county offices where they could provide Zoom there. I don't know that I would be the one doing that, but I'm not, you know, as Kim is saying, I think there's going to be a lot of hybrid and they still want these meetings recorded because it does give more people the opportunity, one, to join live if they want to, or two, to go back and watch it exactly and see what you all talked about.
Yeah, I think there's a real beauty in having these more access is more accessible, easier for people to participate with the online meetings. So I'm actually a big fan of them. But at any rate, we are coming to the close of our meeting. And so I want to thank you, Carolyn, and thank all of you for participating and doing what you are doing to push forward here.
I've had to mute a lot, but my dog keeps barking all night. She's gotten into barking. But next time, if I've the last couple of within this last month, I've seen 2 lectures on talking about bird-friendly cities and window, you know, architecture that has bird-friendly windows and just promoting that in comprehensive plans and stuff. And there's a professor at UVA who has just written a book about this. And but it just doesn't seem like all these new buildings around here are taking any of this into consideration. So, you know, I'll try to find out some more information about what's going on around here. But there's just a lot of window products and things you can add, as well as types of windows that will prevent birds from flying into them. So I think it's something to add to our long list.
Yeah, Peggy,
think
that would
about.
be great if you,
Yeah.
I'd love if you could share some of those
Yeah,
resources with us. That'd be great.
I will. I'm sorry I haven't gotten it together. It's been kind of busy lately. But
And-
I'll try to do it before, if not, you know, maybe sometime in December or January, I'll get some more information for us. Yeah, I promise.
I think, yeah. And I think it's also, I'm really glad that we mentioned the comprehensive plan and to be thinking about those things that may not be in the plan right now that we want to advocate for.
Yeah, you talked about other, you know, cities that have these big comprehensive plans and there's nothing in it about birds, you know, but then other ones like, you know, Vancouver and Toronto and places like that have done a lot to consider ways for architecture that really enhances and, you know, things like that. So anyway, they've been very inspiring lectures. You know how you get all fired up and then you don't do anything, but
Well, you got to start. That is the starting
it's in my
point.
brain. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay.
Well, anyhow, thank you guys so much,
Thank you.
and have a good holiday, Thanksgiving holiday, everybody.
Right.
It's coming around the corner.
That's right. Coming right up.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carolyn.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
You're welcome. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye.